gonna start off this video by doing what Red Guardian did. Yes! Yeah! Thunderbolts! With an asterisk because, well, I'm not gonna tell you why. So, Thunderbolts is the 36th movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the 6th and final film in its Phase 5, part of the multiverse saga. It's the 11th overall installment of Phase 5, the 27th overall installment in the multiverse saga, and overall in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's the 50th installment. Congrats on that. So, in Thunderbolts, we see the formation of a new team in the MCU, consisting of Yelena Belova, the Red Guardian, Alexei Shostakov, Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, US Agent John Walker, Ava Starr, Ghost, and Taskmaster Antonia Dreykov. They're all thrown together by Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, and they end up forming a team because a new looming threat is emerging, and so, well, Thunderbolts assemble. Gotta say, this movie is pretty fun. I had a great time with it, and I'm really glad that most audiences are in agreement with me on that. Now, as far as our team members are concerned, Yelena Belova, once again played by Florence Pugh, making her third appearance in this franchise after the Black Widow movie and the Hawkeye series. She's the Thunderbolt who gets the most focus in this movie. And she was really well written, because she's dealing with an internal crisis that I don't want to get too deep into here. But yeah, after the events of Black Widow and Hawkeye, she's kind of wandering through life, wondering what to do with herself, which, gotta say, pretty relatable protagonist right there. Enter the Red Guardian, David Harbour reprising his role from Black Widow. Y'all know I love this actor, he's so much fun to watch. He is the comedy relief in this movie, and he is pretty funny. Quite a few scenes with him had me and the rest of the audience laughing out loud.
You feel fulfilled?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so full. So filled.
I will admit though, with both him and Yelena, their Russian accents, yeah, they're still not the best. But I can brush that aside because they're both characters that are really easy to emotionally attach yourself to. Sebastian Stan, of course, returning as Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, and he's a congressman now. His place in this story is really interesting, because given everything we've seen him all the way through since 2011, at this point in his life, he's just kind of rolling with the punches. Like, he's like, oh great, now I gotta deal with this ragtag group of assholes who might as well be Marvel's Suicide Squad. But I like him a lot. I mean, he's a fan favorite. I wouldn't say this movie is his shining moment. In my opinion, he's had much more badass moments in other MCU titles, but his place in this story is absolutely necessary. Meanwhile, other characters like Ghost, US Agent, and Taskmaster, they're in it and they're cool to watch, and they do get some shining moments to themselves, for the most part, but they're really supporting characters in this whole thing. That's why they're all further back on the poster. Also gotta shout out Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who plays Val. I loved her in this movie. She's the director of the CIA, because at first, in previous titles, she was kind of built up like Nick Fury was, where she's kind of mysterious, she's a leader of some big organization, but she had this kind of ominous quality about her with a little bit of snark. Now, kind of like in the first Avengers movie with Nick Fury, this is where she finally gets a little bit of spotlight. And again, I don't want to dive into too much detail here, but I love how she played the character. She's still got that same snarkiness. She's funny. Now, there's a lot more to this movie than the trailers let on, and I'm not talking about cameos and surprises, but rather more deeper themes and morals. Some stuff I'm not going to talk about because the trailers didn't touch on them, but one thing I will touch on is the moral of teamwork. This is yet another Marvel Cinematic Universe movie that focuses on this ragtag group of people who should have no business teaming up with each other. We've seen that quite a few times in this franchise now, which is why in that aspect I was like, alright, this isn't anything I haven't seen before. But then there are the deeper themes, which again I have seen a couple of MCU titles touch on, say Moon Knight for example, or The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but this movie does it really, really well, particularly focusing on Yelena Belova and this other guy, Bob, played by Lewis Pullman, who's a really big part of this movie, which is gonna bring me to the visual effects here. I just got back from seeing this movie in IMAX 3D, and it looked awesome. Really cool shadow effects in this one. We saw in the trailer the villain is turning people into shadows, this big shadow spreading across New York City. Really added to this sense of dread that this movie's pushing. A lot of symbolic images because these characters, they're really a bunch of anti-heroes. They're no saints. They're not like the Avengers that we knew. They come from dark backgrounds, so why should they be the ones picked to save the world? That's a good message. I mean, it worked for Guardians of the Galaxy. They were a bunch of assholes who teamed up to save the galaxy. It works here in Thunderbolts. The action scenes in this movie were really cool too. But I will say there are not a whole lot of big spectacle action scenes. In fact, there was really only one. It was about halfway through where I was like, whoa, alright, I'm perking up because this is awesome. Not gonna talk about it because it's a spoiler, but this action scene in particular, I was like, I love it. It was something I wasn't expecting, and for me, it was the coolest action scene in the movie. But this movie doesn't really focus on the action as its main thing. It is more about the drama and emotion with the characters, which I actually really appreciate, in that it is kind of comparable to Avengers Endgame. Because yeah, there's not a lot of action in that movie until the very end, and it's my favorite MCU movie, and one of my favorite movies of all time. So me saying that Thunderbolts Asterisk doesn't focus on the action, that's not a minus point, because it pulls off the drama and emotion with the characters really well. I like Red Guardian now more than I ever have. I mean, not all the characters are still super likable. John Walker's still an asshole. He's fun to watch though. Wyatt Russell, I love this guy. I guess the thing with this movie is that it didn't blow my mind, kind of like Captain America Brave New World. For the most part, it is pretty standard. I mean, yeah, the deeper themes, they're really well executed, so I will say I like this movie better than Captain America Brave New World, but still, nothing really got me really going. There was never a point where I was yelling loud cheering in my seat. I clapped a few times, that was cool. But you know, there have been quite a few MCU movies that have made me shit my pants. In a good way. Not actually. But this wasn't one of them. Also because the first half of this movie I thought was a little bit on the slower side. It wasn't a drag by any means, but a few times in the first half I was like, alright, can we pick up and get to the exciting shit? I appreciate the build up as much as anyone, but you know, let's go. This movie is 2 hours and 6 minutes long. It felt about 15 minutes longer, at least to me. The score was the score. Cool thing is it's composed by Sun Lux. They did the music for Everything Everywhere All at Once, but you wouldn't be able to tell that by listening to this score, because it's pretty standard action Marvel movie score. Again, no big theme that I picked up on. Nothing really stood out about it. It's kind of a bummer, because I get the sneaking suspicion that this is not going to be the only Thunderbolts movie that exists in the MCU. So I wish we could have had a big main theme prevail here. I don't know, maybe I'll pick up on one when I see this again. But until then, no, not right now. In the end, Thunderbolts is solid. A solid team up with solid characters against a solid threat. Great script. This is one of the better scripts we've gotten in the MCU's Phase 5. I'll definitely say that. I don't think that's offsize. Yeah, I love the characters, the action is great when it's on screen, and I love the point we're at now within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like where everybody is, where everyone stands, as we gear up for Phase 6. But for right now, Phase 5 is almost over, and we're ending with a pretty high note. For Thunderbolts, I will say, go see this movie while it's in theaters. And of course, there is a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene. The mid-credit scene, but the post-credit scene, yeah, that's some good shit. So, Thunderbolts, asterisk. Have you seen this movie yet? What are your thoughts on it? Because we are officially in the summer movie season now. And what's your favorite movie in the MCU's Phase 5? Because we have them all now. That's a dumb question. We all know it's Deadpool and Wolverine. Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And of course, thank you for subscribing. Peace!